A rock can be defined as an aggregate of minerals that forms more or less a definite unit of the Earth's crust. So, children, the rock refers not just to any hard solid matter like granite, but also to soft and loose particles like sand, silt, and clay derived from the earth. So, the earth's crust is made up of various types of rocks that differ from one another in terms of texture, structure, color, permeability, occurrence, degree of resistance to denudation. So, children, we must distinguish between rocks and minerals. So, here in this table, you can see, and you also have this table in your textbook, you can check with it. So, the children just understand that whenever we ask you to write the difference between rocks and minerals, do not include examples unless specified. Alright, so the first 3 points are actually the main differences. So, rocks are aggregates of mineral elements, meaning when a number of minerals, they join together, they combine together, they form rocks, whereas minerals are solid inorganic substances which occur naturally. The second point of difference is that a rock does not have a definite chemical composition, while the minerals have a definite chemical composition. Minerals are organized to form rocks, whereas elements are organized to form compounds, which are known as minerals. An element is a pure substance. Then we have these examples you can see in the table. So, the most abundant mineral elements of the earth as a whole are iron, silicon, magnesium, nickel, sulfur, calcium, while the most abundant mineral elements of the crust are silicon, aluminum, iron, magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium. The Earth's crust contains more of silicon and aluminum, whereas the Earth as a whole contains more of iron, silica, and magnesium. So I hope you've understood. You must learn this table well. So children, here you can see a flow chart on types of rocks. So rocks are found in a variety of shapes, colors, textures. So the geologists have classified rocks into three groups according to the way they were formed. So the igneous rocks, the sedimentary rocks, and the metamorphic rocks. So the characteristics of each rock depend on how and where it was formed, whether it was forged in the heat of the Earth's interior, that resulting in the formation of igneous rock, or it was laid down in gently settling layers of the seabed to form sedimentary rock, or transformed by volcanic activity or the impact of continents to form the metamorphic rock. So, there are three main types of rocks, the igneous, sedimentary, and the metamorphic rocks, and we'll be studying about their subtypes in greater detail in this chapter. So, children, in today's class, we are going to study about the igneous rocks, and we'll be studying about sedimentary and metamorphic rocks in the next class. So, igneous rocks. The term igneous comes from the Latin word ignis, which means fire. So these igneous rocks are formed by the fiery molten material that originates far below the surface of the earth. So igneous rocks are actually formed by cooling and solidification of magma. The cooling can take place on the surface or below the surface of the earth. Depending on where the cooling takes place, two different types of igneous rocks, that is the extrusive igneous rocks and the intrusive igneous rocks, are formed. Now, before we study about the difference between extrusive and intrusive igneous rocks, I will be discussing about a few things about the igneous rocks. So, children, these igneous rocks, they are also called the primary rocks because they were the first to be formed. That is why they are called primary rocks. They form the basis of formation of other types of rocks. Now, the characteristics of the igneous rocks. First of all, they are hard and compact. Secondly, they are formed by solidification of molten magma. They are granular and crystalline. They may either be fine grained, smooth, and compact, or may have large crystals with coarse texture. The size of the crystal depends upon the rate of cooling of the molten material. These rocks are less affected by chemical weathering because water does not percolate in these rocks. Because these rocks are very hard and compact, so the gap between the mineral grains of the rock is very small, almost negligible, so it does not allow any percolation to take place. Most of them consist of silicates. They do not have layers. Unlike the sedimentary rocks which have layers, these rocks do not have layers. They are generally weathered by mechanical weathering or physical weathering. And igneous rocks are associated with volcanic activity. They are generally found in area in the volcanic region. Okay. Now in this diagram, you can see the formation of extrusive igneous rocks and the intrusive igneous rocks. The extrusive igneous rocks, they are formed by cooling and solidification of lava on the surface of the earth. Alright. Whereas the intrusive igneous rocks, they are formed when the magma, that is the molten material, is unable to reach the surface of the earth and cools slightly below the surface. Alright, so extrusive igneous rocks are also referred to as the volcanic rocks. And these, a common example is basalt, which is an example of extrusive igneous rocks. It forms lava flows, lava sheets, lava plateaus. Alright, now intrusive igneous rocks, they are also referred to as the plutonic rocks. So, they are formed by the cooling of molten material below the surface of the earth. So, example of plutonic rocks or intrusive igneous rocks are granite, gabbro, Gabbro. Please make this correction in your textbook. Now a repetition of what we had done once again. So here you can see the picture of intrusive igneous rocks. The magma pushes into the surrounding rock below the earth's surface. Now because the rate of cooling is much more slower because the temperature below the surface of the earth is higher. So the intrusive igneous rocks, the magma takes a long time to cool down. So the crystals formed are large. Now, if you see the extrusive igneous rocks, they are formed by cooling and solidification of lava on the surface of the earth. The surface of the earth is comparatively cooler than the interior. So that is why the crystals formed are much more smaller in size. Now here we have a table. You must copy down this table. The difference between intrusive and extrusive igneous rocks. So intrusive igneous rocks, they are formed by cooling of magma within the earth's crust, whereas extrusive igneous rocks are formed by cooling of lava on the earth's surface. Intrusive igneous rocks are coarse textured, whereas extrusive igneous rocks, they are smooth and fine grained. Intrusive igneous rocks, they have large crystals as the rate of cooling is slow, whereas the extrusive igneous rocks, they have small crystals as the rate of cooling is faster on the surface of the earth. Here you can see the example of the igneous rocks, basalt and gabbro. Now next we have the intrusive igneous rock. When the intrusive igneous rocks, they cool below the surface of the earth, they form different types of formations or intrusive landforms. So first you can see is the batholith. They are deep-seated intrusion of igneous rocks. They are generally dome-shaped with no definite floor, and they form the cores of the mountain ranges. In course of time, they may be exposed due to continuous erosion. The next we have is laccolith. Here also, see all these intrusive landforms are formed below the surface of the earth. Because the magma does not reach the crust, so it solidifies below the crust. And here also the laccolith, you can see they are dome shaped, but the only difference with between laccolith and batholith is that in case of laccolith, the bottom is flat, whereas in case of a batholith, they do not have a definite floor. Next, you can see the sill. So when the magma cools horizontally, between layers of rocks, Then it is termed as sill. Next we have the dike. When the magma rises up and cools in a vertical manner, it cools, it fills up vertical cracks or fissures, then it hardens there to form the dikes. And the last is the neck. So next, sometimes the passage of an extinct volcano gets filled with magma. It then solidifies there and is known as volcanic neck or plug. I hope you understood this. Now, next classification of the igneous rock is on the basis of their chemical composition. The acid igneous rocks and the basic igneous rocks. Now here I have prepared a table and you should also copy this. The acid igneous rocks, they have a silica content of 65 to 85%, whereas the basic igneous rocks, they lack in silica content. They have lesser silica content between 40 to 60%. Then the acid igneous rocks, they lack in iron and magnesium, whereas the basic igneous rocks, they are rich in oxides of iron and magnesium. The acid igneous rocks, as you can see in the picture, they are lighter in color, whereas the basic igneous rocks, they are heavy and they are dark in color.